Bonds. A bond can chain us down and take our freedom away. A bond can also give us strength, security and hope. Fruits Basket tells a story of how people affect each other, not just in the moment, but more so how their connections influence each other's feelings, mentality and life in the long run. The good, the bad and the ugly of human relationships. Every character has their own demons to deal with. There is a burden on the characters you can just feel. The members of the zodiac signs rarely just burst out in tears, but you know that they are struggling. Secretly, they are all crying for help, but at first they are unable to express it. Because they are hurt, they close themselves off from others, not only to protect themselves, but also to prevent others from being caught up in the Soma curse. The real conflict here is entirely internal. Now, I think season 1 of Fruits Basket was by far the weakest season, and it honestly put me off the show for a while. However, I will say that season 1 did a good job at laying the ground for what is about to come. Obviously we got introduced to the characters, but furthermore the foundation for the relationships was built. We see how seemingly carefree our characters could be, though there was always a bit of a gloomy feeling in the air. Something isn't quite right, the subtle feeling that something is off. Something is wrong. And as the series progresses we see that feeling unfold and we see where it originates from. So unfortunately I can't possibly talk about every notable character of the series, because frankly then this video would be like 2 hours long, because the show gives pretty much every character their spotlight and time to shine. Honestly, when I say every character, I mean it. Even characters you would deem as not relevant to the story at first get their respective arcs. Of course some characters leave a bigger impression than others, but ultimately the show does an exceptional job at making every character feel meaningful. They are not just mere bystanders, they all have their very own past, struggles and desires. Okay, I will start to go into spoiler territory now, so beware. One of my favorite character arcs of Fruits Basket was Yuki's. At first he is weakened and frightened by the influence of Akito and his family. He is talented in all the right ways, he is smart, good looking and people look up to him. But it all means nothing to him. He feels like he is nothing more than just an empty shell. His family only cares about him because he was born quote-unquote special and not because of who he is. They see him valuable the same way a construction worker values his hammer. To them, he is nothing more than just a tool. So I believe what truly broke Yuki was not being locked up with Akito itself, but rather that he had no shoulder he could cry on, nobody cared to listen to him. That is, until he meets Toru. And thanks to her, he is more and more able to accept himself and others. And to do that, he has to let go of the past. You know the saying that being able to forgive someone is a sign of strength? I always thought how idiotic that way of thinking was, but Yuki made me realize something. Akito, his mother and his brother as well, all did terrible things to him. They were the reason why he was so emotionally damaged in the first place. But as Yuki develops, he forgives them, and I think I start to understand why. It's not always about who is right or wrong. For example, we would probably all agree that Akito is, or was at the very least, a monster. Is she irredeemable? Can we ever forgive her for what she has done? Will she ever become what we deem a good person? I don't know. However, even if she is irredeemable, Yuki recognizes that seeking for revenge or taking Akito as a justification for his suffering will not bring him salvation. All he can do is change himself and try his best. And he isn't the only one. Over the course of the series we see our characters facing their trauma time and time again. Trauma caused by bonds. And when they slowly but surely start to love other people and themselves again, when they finally manage to let the past be and move on, it's incredibly rewarding. Remember when I said that every character has their struggles to deal with? Well, you know what, that's not quite accurate. Almost every character has their own demons, so to speak, and the show hints at that early on. There is one character who is however quite different in that regard. Shigure. Now, up until the very end, I was sure that Shigure would be the villain of the story, and let me explain why I got that impression. Shigure is terrifying, but in a very unconventional way. What makes Shigure scary is that he is so careless. He always smiles, he never loses his composure, he just doesn't fit in, if you know what I mean. Between all these troubled characters, Shigure feels fake. He's too careless, the persona he's trying to sell feels artificial. Though he chats and smiles, he never truly seems interested in human compassion. He toys with people, he is lazy, he almost misses his deadlines, and he looks like he just got out of bed. Everything screams, hey, I'm just your typical relatable guy, you know? But it just doesn't add up. He tries to hold up this persona of someone relatable, someone trustworthy and goofy, but ultimately he feels least human out of the entire cast. And on rare occasions, especially when he is separated from the group, we can see how cold he can actually be. Because in reality, he is much more sophisticated than he would like us to believe, and that makes him dangerous. As Shigure said himself, he is twisted. Does that mean he is evil though? Well, I don't think so, because ultimately he is one of the most important factors in ending the curse. His methods are not exactly admirable. He manipulates, lies, and toys with already broken people. But he does all that to break the curse. He throws fuel into the fire because he knows that the bonds can only be broken this way. Even if he did it for selfish reasons and never truly cared for Toru and the others, that doesn't change the fact that he was an important piece to solve the puzzle. And this contradiction of his persona makes him one of my favorite characters in the show. I believe at this point you can tell that I enjoyed Fruits Basket quite a lot, but there's one thing I have to criticize. Now, my biggest problem with Fruits Basket is that it sometimes loses itself in unnecessary humor. You have some really amazing, genuinely heartbreaking scenes, and then suddenly the show goes like, haha, you can laugh now. It kinda reminds me of Your Lie in April, also a good show with great moments, but it also had a lot of unnecessary quote-unquote funny moments. A occasional joke to light up the mood is fine, but I think that you should have time to appreciate the moment without being immediately confronted with slapstick or whatever after a genuinely emotional scene. It's not that big of a deal, but it did take me out of the moment sometimes. I don't need any comedy when I'm watching a sad scene. I like my suffering raw, thank you very much. Especially towards the end of the show, Fruits Basket fortunately does know when to keep silly scenes out of the picture, which is not the only, but one of the reasons why I think the final season is the best. Also, for the lack of a better word, the show is incredibly wholesome. Now, the term wholesome is kind of overused and all, but the show gave me a genuinely good feeling without making it seem forced or unnatural. Even though we see so much bad stuff happening, the ending wraps up everything in a very satisfactory and wholesome way. There, I said it again, because although you will see a lot of darkness along the way, Fruits Basket is a feel-good anime if I've ever seen one, and a damn well executed one at that. And with that in mind, thank you for watching this video, and goodbye.